I'm good, Otis. How are you?
I'm doing I'm doing great. I had a long week, I have to admit, but
Okay.
I'm doing come out the other
I
side.
have written a bit. I have written a bit, but it was not in a shape to submit, which is why I haven't sent it. But yes, I have written a bit.
Oh, I hope you don't really worry about what kind of shape it's in. I mean, since it's better that we don't think of our work as being very precious because that helps us work on it, doesn't it? If we work on it to such an extent that we're like, this is perfect, we have so much more trouble doing anything more with it, right?
No, that's true. That's true.
Ashvani, how are you? Ashvani.
Hey, sorry, Otis. I had, I had looked at the notes you had sent me for the review, and I actually sent you the wrong. I sent you
Yeah,
the
I
wrong
was, I was, I opened it up last night. I'm like, 55
57 pages, and you
pages.
were, that's the one for the shared roots anthology.
Oh yeah.
Ratul's. Sorry
Okay,
about
that
that. I didn't realize it. I just saw that in your note.
Crunchu, I'm going to tell you that 55 pages is a little long for any short story. That is a novella. So you might be working on a novella and you might think about a version that's a short story. But I know exactly what what's happening. I mean, I'm trying to work on a novel that I'm hoping is going to be maybe 600 fast paperback pages to turn, and right now it's like 1,000. So
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll send you the review again
yeah.
for next
Okay,
week.
well, we might touch down on your review for this week a little bit, and so that might give you some ideas too. But we won't spend a lot of time on it. We won't beat it up too bad since you're already rewriting it. And Jay is here. Good. Um, so Shutran, how are you?
I would is fine.
You didn't submit anything more for this week, I don't think.
Yeah, you gave us one assignment, right? So
But
I completed the beginning, but then I thought I'd complete up to the ending and then send it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear very well, but you didn't send anything, I don't think.
So what I said was that you gave us an assignment, right?
Oh, the
To
4-page
write.
story?
Yeah, so I wrote the beginning, but it got extended to 3 pages like that. So I thought I'd complete up to the ending and then send the whole part to you
Okay,
next
great.
week probably.
Yeah, what did you think about did you try that assignment, Ram? We should give it to Ashvani too.
Yeah, I tried that assignment, and I did the beginning and I did the middle. I yet to complete the end, and that's where I am. And I'm quite happy with the way it is progressing.
Really,
So
that's
thank you
great.
for that.
Yeah, Ashvani, I don't think you were here last week, were you?
I was not here last week, and
Okay.
now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I gave everyone an assignment, and it would be great to give it to you too. But basically, it's a 4-page story. The first page is the beginning. Page 2 and 3 are the middle,
Middle.
and page 4 is the end. 4 pages. Do you know that I don't remember who said it, but it was some writer wrote a letter and said, "Sorry for such a long letter. I didn't have time to write it shorter." Um, but it's wickedly hard to compress and get those emotional stakes. But really, a poem is a story like that, so it works through a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it can be obviously quite short. So, and okay, shall we, Jay? Let's talk to you about your work for last week, because you missed last week, right?
Yeah. Hi, Otis.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. how's things up where you are? You're still in the same area, I think.
Same old, same old.
You're just getting used to it now?
I guess. It's been more or less what you see in the news is a slightly more exaggerated version of how things are here.
Mm-hmm.
So as they, yeah, to use a cliched phrase, it is the new normal. So.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. Where is your work? Oh yeah, this is it here. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about this work, and then we'll have you read some of it and then talk about it?
Yeah. So this is the introduction to a book that I'm working on. The book is essentially a commentary on a collection of poems written in the 9th century. So this particular part that I've sent you is part of the introduction to the book.
Okay.
So after this introduction, the book that I'm doing a commentary on has 30 songs or 30 poems. So I'm doing each poem into a different chapter in the book. So it's about 35,000 words is what I'm looking at.
Oh, okay. And you'll include a translation of those poems and maybe even a discussion of the translations? You said 9th century?
Yeah, 9th century, written in my mother tongue, but the commentary is going to be in English. And it is going to draw references from other much older works as old as 2,000 years old.
Oh, kind of like following some literary tropes that might have been used earlier are sort of reappearing in these works?
Literary themes, philosophical themes as well.
Okay. And what's the mother tongue? Is it Sanskrit?
It's called Tamil.
Oh, in Tamil. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Great. Okay.
So this is the introduction to the life of the poetess before she wrote that and how things came to be to that point.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see what. Let's have you read the first page then, and then we'll all kind of get up to speed a little bit.
I don't see the page. I don't think Ashwini either.
Let's see. I should be able to get it there.
We are not seeing your shared screen.
Yeah.
No.
So where do I begin?
Do you see the beginning then? So just at the start, and maybe just this first page.
Okay. In the Tamil Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition, Vishnu Chittar is revered as one of the foremost of the 12 Alvar saints and is respectfully addressed as Periyalvar or the Elder Alvar. He lived during the early to mid 9th century CE in the village of Srivilliputtur in southern Tamil Nadu. Periyalvar's Nitya Karma, as in daily prayers, involved picking flowers from the gardens and making garlands for the form of Lord Vishnu at the Vatapatra Sai temple in the village. As the epithet Alvar means, Periyalvar is so deeply immersed in his task, Kaikarya, that he names his daughter as Kodai, meaning garland. Kodai grows up listening to stories of Krishna growing up in Gokula. Periyalvar tells her about the baby Krishna in the arms of Yashoda, pulling his mother's hair bedecked with flowers. Flowers, exclaims Kodai, taking the basket of flowers from her father and turning them upside down on the floor. Laughing, he takes her in his lap and sings the sacred Pallandu verses dedicated to Krishna. For every utterance of Pallandu, Kodai picks up a flower and hands them one by one to him. Before Periyalvar knows it, a long, lush garland of flowers is made. He takes the garland to the Vatapatra Sai temple. When he returns from the temple, he gives Kodai a flower received as prasadam from the temple for her to adorn her hair with. Over the years, Krishna becomes a young boy in Periyalvar's stories. He plays the flute, takes cows to pasture, even terrorizes the village with his antics and adventures. Kodai too blooms into a young girl, accompanying her father in picking flowers and singing about Krishna's adventures. Do I go on?
I did want you to finish the page, but so let me give it. I'm going to give you a little advice though. So I mean I think that this writing is really good, and so I think that there's going to be a time when this book is produced, and so I'm going to tell you something that you're going to hear a lot of times if you do have this kind of coaching. Read more slowly. So when you give when you're gonna have to give public readings, and I've given a few, you have to really train yourself to read more slowly. It's kind of difficult because when we read things in front of other people, we get nervous, or at least I do. I get very nervous, in fact. And so I want it basically to be over as soon as possible. So reading more slowly is a little bit counterintuitive to what I want to have happen, which is to get the hell out of there. But maybe just, I did want you to read the rest of the page. I almost wanted to interrupt you and just see, it's not, you're not going to do it perfectly today or tomorrow or the next day, but it would be something to work on over time. Yeah, let's hear the rest of the page, maybe a little bit more slowly.
Kodai's sweet voice and songs attract the singing parrots of the garden. They sing along, mimicking her words. Kodai chooses a male parrot as her pet and names him Shuka. As Periyalvar and Kodai return that day and finish making the garland, there is a call at the door. Vishnu Chittare, Periyalvare. He places the garland on a plate and goes to answer the door. Kodai sits there, looking at the garland. On an impulse, she picks it up from the plate, walks to the mirror. She holds it in front of the mirror, in front of her, watching the smile of her reflection in the mirror. Krishna, your garland looks beautiful. See how bright it looks when I hold it. From all these flowers, Appa brings only one every day. Can I try this garland on? The reflection smiles wider. See, even you think I should wear it. Don't say I didn't ask you.
Okay, thank you. That's very nice. Okay, so I would love to hear some others maybe chime in. So as an introduction, you might know these poems better than I do. As an introduction to this commentary on these poems, what do you think about this first page? Maybe I'll pick on Ram for now. Oh, great, thank you, Ram.
I'm sorry, this is starting somewhere in the middle of the introduction because I was constrained to bring it down to 1,200 words. I started from somewhere in the 4th paragraph of the introduction and I sent it to you.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Jay. Okay, well, we're just gonna have to then wing it. We'll have to maybe there was. But anyway, let's have our impressions. Go ahead, Ram.
Yeah.
What
This story is actually very close to my heart, but I'll come to that later. In fact, this is one of the reasons of how I seriously got into writing. But more about that later. About this specific piece that Jay has submitted, I'm familiar with the story, so I did not have any trouble following it. But if I have to take a step back and see, for somebody who is not familiar with this story, it might seem too abrupt a beginning without a background. Like there are a lot of terms which for somebody who is not familiar with this, it might be a little difficult to follow, like, who is Periyalvar, what is the Tamil Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition. It might help. I don't know if that is covered in the first 4 paragraphs. I would presume that it is there. So a more of a background of placing it in the context of history, in the putting it in the right time, place, and geography, that might help for a reader to ease into this piece, because the story is fascinating. It's a beautiful story, but for a reader who is not familiar with these stories, a more elaborate introduction might be helpful. That was my first thought.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
Yeah, I would also say the same thing, like, all our saints and everything. So because we are familiar with it, and I also make these mistakes a lot of time. I basically use some of these terms straight away because hoping that, the audience is anyway, already aware of it. But if the audience is not aware of what these are, then it basically, it just basically remains a word. It doesn't have any meaning behind it. So when you explain that a little bit in the beginning, then you set the context clearly that it's about, say, Krishna, it's about Vaishnavism, and that flows then comes through very much more clearer.
Mm-hmm.
So all the terms he's using are basically, we are familiar with them, but and Krishna and Gokul, and what is Gokul literally. So some of these basically have to be put in context. Another thing I didn't like was word terrorizes the village. Use a different term here. So
Okay.
Krishna terrorizes.
Right. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think my take on it. Do you mind if I stop sharing? And I'm gonna still have it up on my thing, but anyway, I'd just like to see everyone. Jay, you can come on if you can. And anyone else, we can all come on. We can all, we don't have Abhinav now, structuring us so much, telling us what we can and can't do. Jay, are you able to do video?
Yeah.
I lost the sound. I lost all my sound. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can. Yeah, yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I just lost Jay's sound.
Yeah, I think he's muted. So
Okay, Jay, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to get a camera.
Okay.
Does this work?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so in the beginning here, I mean, I read through this, so 6 pages. I read through and I really didn't know what I was reading about, frankly, but I will say that the writing seemed great. Like I really enjoyed the writing. If I were to make, my kind of classic critiques, so no matter what we're writing, we want to sort of like try to take care of the reader's consciousness. We want to settle the reader into a kind of point of view. So if we're writing a narrative, we usually settle that the reader into the point of view of the protagonist. If we're writing something that is like an intellectual thing, like a commentary on poems, or we're writing an essay, we're writing something with a thesis statement, for example, then we want to take the reader's consciousness and sort of merge it into the omniscient narrator's consciousness. And then we want to make sure that we move the omniscient we're never dealing with omniscient narration, okay? We're always dealing with a limited omniscient narrator. And we want that omniscient narrator then to focus on things in a very clear way as they move through the story. Because writing is something that's linear, right? It's a linear timeline. So either we take the reader and we put them in a protagonist and we basically make them move this way, but if we go to backstory, it's clear. Now we're dealing with backstory and the reader knows we're in the past, and then we return to the present and now we're going forward. So there's a linear progression and the reader always knows where they are. Same thing for an essay or anything where we're using an omniscient narrator. We want to place that reader into the limited omniscient narrator. And then we want to move them clearly. Now we're dealing with ideas, not time and space. necessarily, but ideas, but we want to move in a linear fashion through those ideas also, like, very clearly. It's basically because the human being is limited, right? We experience life in a linear way. We move forward, we experience new things, we order it by, this is what I'm experiencing now, this is what I experienced before, and maybe I'll experience these things in the future, but I don't know. So that's how our brains work. And so we want to sort of mimic that in the way that we write. So when I think about this beginning, I don't feel like I know where I am. I don't feel like I'm in that narrative consciousness that is doing something that I can perceive of what they're doing. Let me ask a question. Okay, so I tend to think that essay writing, essentially all writing, still works on a story structure. So we know what I would say in terms of how you start a narrative story. What do you do in a narrative story to grab the reader's attention? I'm going to give a quiz. Ashwani can answer.
The introduction actually begins. The introduction actually begins with the dialogue. I mean, it's only about another 50, 60 words. I could paste it in the comment box if anybody's interested.
Yeah. We'll just keep this conversation in a hypothetical level.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my introduction to this begins with a conversation between the sage Narada and Vishnu.
Yeah.
So that's how the introduction begins. It is a conversation between the two where the god Vishnu tells the sage Narada where exactly he can be found. And he says that I can be found in the hearts of people I can be found in the presence of people who dance singing my name. It's a famous quotation from Purana written in Sanskrit. So that is the opening. Narada asks Vishnu where he's found, and Vishnu answers by saying he's found in the presence of people who dance singing his name. And then from there I continue into how this Bhagavata Bhakti movement that is embodied by Narada finds its manifestation in each part of India. And then I zero in on, by talking about the Bhakti tradition in various parts of India, the next step I zero in on the Tamil Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition. So that is where the para that I sent you begins in the Tamil Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition, and the previous 4 paragraphs talk about where Vishnu is to be found, and then the various forms of bhakti in all parts of the country, and then the Tamil Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to go back to my question, because that's a kind of, I'm pulling the strings here. What do we do in a narrative story to get the reader interested in what we're doing? Ram knows the answer. It's one word, starts with a C.
Conflicts.
Thank you. So we create a conflict. Because then the reader wonders what's going to happen. And I argue that basically if we want to write something that makes people read it who are not necessarily going to read it. Like, let's think of me as your audience, right? I'm a person, I'm just in a bookstore. I open up the book. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means. The title has told me nothing. I read the first line. If I read the first line of your book, you want to grab me by the throat and not let me go. And we do that by creating a conflict. In narrative, we do that through the character interacting with the antagonist. We put those two things on the page. And then we also include, then we want to have something that deals with the internal struggle, why we care. So that is like a little kernel that I think we should always remember. When we write an intellectual book, I actually believe that we should do the same thing. And the way we do that is we basically write a thesis of some kind. We basically create the conflict in a thesis statement. The basis of a thesis statement to me is, this is my reduction, my serious reduction, no fancy jargon associated with it. This is a thesis statement. You think this, You are wrong. It is this. Okay, that's a thesis statement. There's an antagonistic group, an audience that believes something. There's you say, this is not correct, this thing instead. You should see it this way. And what you do when you create a thesis statement like this is you create your audience. Your audience is that group that you've identified thinks a certain way. And you figure out how they think, and then you also want to figure out how you're going to make an argument that they should think a different way. And that draws in your audience so that they wonder, am I thinking something that's not correct? Right? Is there something else I should be thinking? And then I'm going to discover something. And then they wonder what's going to happen. Who's going to be right? Who's going to win? Am I going to win with my wrong ideas? Or is this author going to win with their right ideas? That's the basis of a thesis statement. And a thesis statement is a conflict that's put onto the page so that the reader wonders, what's going to happen, which is the driving force. And you can think about your first paragraphs, whether they do this, but as I'm reading here, I'm not wondering about anything. So the only thing that's keeping me going is the fact that I'd rather be reading these words than doing everything else that I want to do. Right? We don't want that bargain. We don't want the bargain of, I'm reading these words just because I don't want to do anything else. We want to create the compact where the reader is feeling like what is here in this book is going to help me survive better because I'm going to understand things better. I'm going to get what I want, which is a rich and fulfilled life, whatever it is. That's what we want to put on the page. So when I'm reading the beginning here, and I think this is something for you to think about. I don't know whether you're writing about the physical poems themselves or whether you're writing about the ideas. It seems like you're writing about the ideas in the poem. I'm not sure if is there a single author for these poems? A known author?
Yes, there is an author. But the part that I you is not the poems at all. It is just the introductory chapter to what subsequent chapters would be covering.
Okay. I would try and get to the poems. I would try and get to something tangible.
Okay.
I mean, whether you're going to try to get to the poems or you're going to get to the author of the poems, you want to get on the page the tangible things that we can hold on to so that we know that what you're going to be dealing with is the poems. This moves into a story, and I'm not sure why I'm reading the story. I like the story. If I were to make a critique of the story, I would say, again, I don't really have a point of view in the story. We're dealing with characters, but I don't know who the central character is. I don't know who the protagonist is. I don't know where I am. So I'm just sort of up here hovering, hearing about this story down here. I put a check mark down at the bottom because I like that moment where you write, and you write fantastic sentences. I really enjoy them. But the reflection smiles wider. See, even you think I should wear it. Don't say I didn't ask you. I mean, I suddenly moved into a point of view. And when I move into a point of view, I feel good. And then I make check marks because I like that. I like imagining I'm the person. But if this is an intellectual work, I would strongly, I don't force anything, but I would suggest that the common form is to contextualize what you're going to write about. So and this is very common in an introduction. Contextualize these poems in history. Tell us about them. I would suggest, honestly, try to write this for someone who is as uninitiated as me, right? Someone who knows nothing. I know nothing. My mind is empty. The reader pretty much doesn't want to have things on their mind. They want to sort of be taken over by the author. They want the author to move in to this empty space. So imagine that the reader doesn't know anything. You can imagine me, if you will, and then contextualize for it. Contextualize these poems and what you're treating. These poems were written during this time. They were found here. There's probably some, I don't know what archaeological evidence there is of the originals. These kinds of things, they were found in this area geographically. Then people have written commentaries about them, et cetera, just help us understand what you're talking about very specifically in time and space. And then it's very common at the bottom, so you contextualize your argument is what it's called. Contextualize your argument, and then you make your argument, the thesis statement. That is extremely common. And it's like a trope. It's what we expect. And I even if you choose to go another way later on, I would still do this work to help the reader situate themselves in your argument. And then, I mean, I think that the way you describe how you're going to write the book by having the poems and then having a commentary, I think that probably works well. But we have to, so like, think of all those chapters. So how many poems are there that you'll be treating?
30.
So there's 30 poems. That's a lot. But the introduction and the thesis statement would be so powerfully concise that we understand the argument that you're making throughout the entire work. Right? So that no matter what you say about this one, they're actually all focused within the thesis statement that you put in the beginning. Because you don't want to have to reiterate the thesis statement all the time. You want it to be so concise that it basically burns into our mind. And again, the way it burns into our mind is that I think it understands this relationship of you think this, you're wrong. You think the way, you think this, and you think that this is going to be good enough to achieve enlightenment, to survive, to, be thin and beautiful for the rest of your life, whatever it is that you're saying, you think that eating hamburgers every day is going to keep you thin and healthy. You're wrong. You need to eat broccoli, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be clear. And it has to strike to the heart. And then that idea, that thesis statement has to carry us through the entire work, where you're basically then making that argument. This poem, this poem, this poem, this poem, however you're contextualizing it, whatever's driving the piece, the thesis, until we come up to the end where you basically say, see, I was right. That's the surprise ending. I said that you're wrong and I'm right, and guess what? I am right and you are wrong. Welcome to my world.
Okay.
It's I think I get it. I mean, I love ideas. I write a lot of ideas. I love exploring things. I seem to just love to type. I seriously, I can type, anywhere in my book. I can start coming up with new ideas anywhere that I am. I just love it. We have to do this work for our reader, because we're not going to get we love exploring ideas. We love typing. We use these stories and everything for us to think and for us to become more enlightened and to see the world in new and interesting ways, to make everything sparkle. It's like our drug, this writing thing. But we have to bring the reader along with us. And for that, we have to contain contain that fire, that's in our minds. And it can seem arduous, but really it isn't. I mean, you have the experience, you're great at typing, you're great at writing sentences. So just try and bear down to the physicality, contextualize these poems for us in space and time, and then try and write out as clearly as possible why it is that we should read it. What is it that we're wrong about? What is the new thing that you're offering about these poems? It is very difficult. The thesis statement is probably going to be just one, maybe compound sentence. Don't worry about it if you don't get it right, but that you strive to write it. Try one, that starts to hone your thinking. Then you're going to revise it, that starts to hone your thinking. Then you're going to revise it, and that hones your thinking. And it will restrict you a little bit in terms of what you end up writing about the poems and all. It might not all be just complete exploration through writing, but you can deal with that when the time comes. And the other thing too, there's kind of two ways to write a book, and I don't know where you are with this one. So one way is to write, this is your introduction, and then write the book. You're still going to have to do the work to come up with this thesis statement. Sometimes you need to write the book in order to know the thesis statement. Or sometimes you can work out the thesis statement and then write the book. I've heard this said many times, there's two ways to write a book. One is you work on this beginning section over and over until you get it right, and then you launch the book and you write the rest of it. Or you write the book, and then you rewrite the book, and then you rewrite the book until you do it, until you get it right. So it doesn't matter how you do it or what your style is. My style is the second style. I write the book, then I figure it out. That's because I love being in that imaginative world, or I love being in that thought-provoking world. And I don't love forcing myself to focus that much, but that's me, and you have to choose for yourself. What's the best path? Which is a long way for me to say, I don't want to dissuade you. If you are on your roll and you want to just dig into these poems, but at the end of the day, I also want you to publish this book, and I want to read it, okay? But I'm not going to read it if I don't know what's going on. I'm telling you, I want you to send me this book. I want to read it. I want to be illuminated by what you have to say. I want that. I'm telling you, I promise. But I will not do it if I don't know what's going on, if I don't know what this is about, and if I don't know why it matters to me. Then it's just a big book that takes up time. And I have a lot of big books that take up time in my office. I can show them to you. And I don't read them. So I really, really want to read this book, Jay. So I hope that you will do the work to make that so it can happen.
Yes, Otis. Thank you.
I'm excited to read about these poems. I really am. I'm very excited. But I won't do it unless you hook me. I will not do it. All right. Thanks, Jay. That's a wonderful writing as always. Let's see. Is Pranshu still here?
Pranshu was here, but he left, leaving a message that he has to go.
Oh, we had a little work from him here. So, and then I don't think I see Sweta or Sweta. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. Swetha. I don't see her here. Well, Pranchu and Swetha's work are the only two works that I have, other than Jay's, which we just beat up thoroughly. So I don't know what's going to happen with Jay and his writing career at this point. Actually, I do. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said a while ago, when talking about Jay's work, that if you are presenting a thesis statement in the beginning, you tell the reader, you suggest to him that what he thinks is not right, and that you are going to tell him what is right. So isn't there a danger there that half of your prospective readers, by law of probability, would think that what you are saying is what you are saying, that he is wrong, that is correct, that he is wrong, but the other half may actually agree with you right in the beginning, so then there is no conflict.
Well, what we want to do when we write a thesis statement is basically write something new. If we're writing something that people already believe, then we probably don't have to write it. I mean, then we need to write, then we need to say, you think this, you need to read this book, right? I mean, we've come to our knowledge somehow. We're basically, when we write a book about intellectual ideas, when we write an idea book, we're basically saying we're taking all of the ideas. We're taking the poems that led to these poems, we're taking the commentaries, and we're following a line basically up to the present time. And we're basically saying that, you know what, this is where we've arrived. Here in the present time, I'm saying something new that takes us in a new direction. It should be new to everybody. I taught university level composition. So you would get things like, a thesis statement could be, you don't write it exactly, you think. Okay, so these are just the words that I use in my mind to help direct me. But basically it's like, you think Madonna is the greatest singer of all time. You're wrong, she destroyed music. You're right that the you that you use in the beginning, you think, so like again, it's conceptual. I'm not writing this, or I might write it, but in the end, you're not going to write your thesis statement like that. This is going to be suggested, right? It's suggested that your audience has a certain point of view and that you're offering them a new point of view. But that you, who does not have your ideas, they are your audience. And you're right that if there are people who do have your ideas, then they aren't your audience. Because you're creating a conflict with this specific audience who basically cares about this as a topic, who have a belief system about it. For me, I would at least try to conceptualize the idea, the thesis statement behind this, as broadly as possible, because I do want that you to be as large an audience as possible, right? So, I mean, that's what we were talking about already a little bit in terms of some of the language. Like this work right now is not accessible to me, but I wouldn't say to Jay that he would want to exclude me as a possible audience member. So how can he include me too? In a vague sense, you might say, you think that these ancient, and for me, obscure, right? So these ancient and obscure poems from the Tamil region of 19th century India have no bearing upon your life and modern society. You're wrong, they do. And then you might want to give the reader a little bit of a taste because they might not believe you, because you can say that about anything. These poems express an exquisite connection with nature and the universe that has been lost in modern society. Ooh, okay, I already got little tingles, right? So I want my you think, I will even write up a thesis statement. You think, ... what? And I want that you to be big. You think, I want it to be like whoever picks up this book is going to be part of that you. That's for sure. And then I don't ever write that they're wrong, right? Clearly, but I know that that's the logical step, right, in my thesis statement, because I'm creating you is the antagonist, and I think this, I am the protagonist. And you're writing the story to the antagonists. But one thing, when you write a thesis statement and you develop ideas like this, you do have to be careful, because you are really talking to someone here. You're not talking to sorry for lack of a better word, but you're not talking to an idiot. You're talking to an intelligent human being who's come to their belief systems through a lifetime of exposure and experience. And they may even have come to their life experience through much more exposure and experience than you have. They are not, Ashwani, you know what a straw man argument is.
Yes.
Tell everyone what a straw man argument is.
That you put, an idea in somebody else's place, which is not his idea actually, and then you destroy that argument, and you feel that you've done something fantastic, but actually you haven't achieved anything.
Right. It's basically you create your opposition's arguments, but it's weak. It's a straw man, and you can knock it down. And you're acting like you've achieved something in terms of your argument because you've knocked down a straw man. When you write this thesis like this, you think this, you're wrong, this, that you is not a straw man. Because if you treat because that you is your audience. And if you treat your audience like a straw man, then they don't read your book. You have to honor your you have to honor your audience by treating them as the most intelligent human beings just like you, right? So, and because of that, since it's I, right, the narrator versus the you, then you're treating that you, they're a human being just like you. So then you have to show them the work that you did to get to this other place. Right? It's esoteric. It's difficult. It was a journey you took. You have to take them, the you. I was just like you until I did this work and I went like this. I just moved this far on the needle. And that's what I'm trying to give you, this movement that I did through my hard work. And I'm giving it to you in this book. And then this you sees that. They see that they've been honored, that they've been treated with respect. They see the hard work you've done, and they come with you. Because you're not trying to tell them that they're stupid. You're trying to bring them along with you. What I want to say, with honor again, right? You're trying to give them something. You're not trying to destroy something in them.
Excuse me, Otis.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Shweta is in the session. You'll have to upgrade her to the panelist.
Wait, who? Sorry?
You're the host right now. Shweta is present in the session as an attendee. So you will have to upgrade her to a panelist so that we can have her here. Anything like that.
Okay. I don't. Wait. Okay,
I can see her in the list of attendees.
Madhavi, you might be a panel. Is anyone else?
I think you are the host for the session right now, so you can only do it.
Okay, I can only do it. I don't know. Do you know where I go in order to do that?
Participants at the bottom.
Right, I'm on I'm on that.
So if you click on participants, the participants list will come on your screen.
Right, I see that.
And it is on the left side, it has got panelists. On the right side, it's got attendees.
Oh,
so try clicking on her name and see.
So click on the attendees and then go to her name and click on that.
Okay.
Okay, we have her.
And Rahul, there's another guest. I don't. Okay. Okay. Sweta. Oh, so if you're not allowed to talk, you don't show up on the screen. Oh, that's
okay.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry I didn't attend some of the classes because I wanted to rewrite the story and then sort of return. I've tried to keep some of the points that you had shared, and I'm looking forward to your feedback on the rewrite.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen again, and we'll talk about this piece. Good. I'm glad we have a little more work to talk about. But to finish off the conversation about that thesis statement, I think, Ashwani, that what we're talking about here in terms of that audience is really important and really just worth thinking about as deeply as possible. Doing this work in the beginning, I think, saves us a lot of time, and also, puts us in the right relationship with our audience. Our audience we're not trying to propagandize our audience. We're not trying to force them to think what we think. We conceptualize our audience as they're human beings, just like us. They're just as smart as us. They're not lesser than us. None of those things are true. They are, everyone is equal. And we want to reach all of them. And we're trying to do something for them. And it actually, for me, it doesn't matter whether we're writing an intellectual piece or we're writing a narrative. It's true in either case. We're not trying to manipulate our audience and make them think what we think. We're trying to bring them along as in the same way that we're also going along. So it's noble work that we're doing. Okay, so I'm sharing this screen. Share screen. Okay, Sweta, maybe you can tell us a little bit about this story.
So I had, this is for the Cambodia project. And what I did was I wanted to have a narrative, and I wanted to have a plot, and I wanted to have structure. I wrote it actually within 2 to 3 hours. So it was not like I spent years writing it. But the thing is that I wanted to have all those elements in that you had spoken of. And so I wanted it to be one integrated narrative rather than something that was in fragments. And the second thing was that I felt it was a symbol for travel. So when I finished the story, I felt what I got out of it was a symbol of two nations which had sort of people from two countries who sort of traveled to each other, and it was a sort of symbolic story. So that's what I felt. But
Okay.
I look forward to your feedback, and I don't know. I mean, until I get your feedback, I really don't know what else to think.
Okay. So I like what you said, that you wrote it quite quickly. I mean, I've appreciated this about your work too. I can completely tell that you enter into this imaginative universe, and your fingers are just flying. I mean, I always feel that with your writing. It's just kind of these remarkable creations, imaginative creations.
Thank you.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe you could read just at this end spot here.
Okay.
Just to the end.
Yeah.
Nice and slowly. This is our new mode. We try and read slowly.
Okay. Just like they didn't have villages in Cambodia, they didn't have battlefields too. All this sounded strange to Ramali, and she followed the crows to the nearby battlefield. After 3 nights of travel and following the flying crows, she reached the place they had told her about. It was a vast, clear field covered with sand. On the sand lay bloodied and dejected dragons. Ramali cried when she saw the carnage in front of her. The dragons were howling and in great pain. They were lying in a circular formation. In the center of the circle lay their queen who was dying. They were grieving because they were wounded and because their queen was dying. The queen had the face of a dragon and the body of a woman. Her gown was bloodied. A sword was jutting through her heart. Ramali's heart started beating against her chest. She knew she could save the dragon queen. Ramali walked up to the dragon queen and placed her limp head on her thighs. She cast a magic spell and pulled out the sword. Then, with an enchantment, she healed the dragon queen. The dragon queen looked up with confusion and then passed out. Ramali walked up to each dragon and cast a spell on each of them so that their wounds would disappear. The dragons, despite the recent brutal defeat at war, started rejoicing again at this magics.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Sweta, let's see, I'm going to go back to not sharing. Okay. If I can see more people, it's so much more enjoyable than me just sitting here looking at my own bicycle behind my head about to fall on me. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's so nice to see people. Sweta, I'm not sure if you have video possible.
Video. I don't seem to have access to video. It's not displaying anywhere. I think you'll have to give me access to it.
Oh my goodness. What the heck?
She's still not a panelist, I think. I think she's here as an attendee.
Oh, how do I make her a panelist?
Shweta, maybe you got a message saying join as panelist.
Oh, I get it.
I've got it now. I've got it now.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Rahul, who I don't think you've been here before, but sorry, we usually have someone who's managing the intricacies of the Zoom. I'm just the writer, so I'm not a technical person. So I thought, nice to see you.
Hi, Otis.
So I will say that I this is just, like my thought things that I do, but I think there's a danger to writing something that is symbolic. And I'm going to say that I know writing something that's symbolic, again, is the kind of intellectual activity. And that we enjoy. We know Jay will enjoy it. These flights, the mind, we love. It is really a big problem for me that I do love thinking. I have trained myself. I have no restrictions about thinking. It is the way that I explore the world. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of knowledge or any of those things. And I really love it. Our audience, why does our audience care about what we write versus what everyone else writes? Why do they make those choices? I think our readers care about what we're writing because we make it relevant to their lives. That's important. It goes along with the conversation about the you think this and you're wrong, it is this. Mm-hmm. We are trying to offer our audience something relevant to their lives. We know that our audience cares about their own life. That's the thing, that's at the base of what we understand about our audience. They want to survive, right? They actually even want to flourish. They want to flourish spiritually. They want to flourish physically, right? So we can write self-help books of various kinds. We can write spiritual books. We can write stories in which characters undergo incredible stress, but then they finally make choices that help them to survive and transcend. We do all those things, but they all have one thing in common. They help our reader. They feel, it may not occur, but they feel that it helps them towards a better life. They learn from us. Mm-hmm. The problem with with something that's symbolic is, how is it relevant? How is this symbolism relevant to the reader? It might be, or it might be an avenue that you're finding to get to that relevance for the reader. But at the end, what we need to do is we need to get that relevance onto the page so that the reader is going to participate in this action of reading our work. We have to look at our reader, and this is going back to the thesis statement in Jay's work too. Our reader has the opportunity to live an incredibly full life. It's right outside their door, right? Every minute. I could go outside, I could smell flowers, I could walk around, I could dance and sing, I can spend time with my daughters, I could do the dishes, which I need to do because they're not going to get done otherwise. All these things are out there for me to do. So why do I take my time from doing all of those things, living life, and give it instead to this work? Because it's going to be relevant and worth it for me. So beware of symbolism. So that's my uptake. Beware of symbolism. That's our idea. We think it's great. We're interested in it. We love it. But is the reader going to grab onto that? It really just is seldom that, like our ideas. I mean, I'm very frustrated with this because I have great ideas. I have incredible ideas. I think they're amazing, but I can't get anyone to read them because everyone has ideas. So what we have to do is we have to create this sense, this drive of relevance. So anyway, I would suggest one way storytellers have done this through the millennia is they put characters on the page and they show a character struggle, because that is something that every reader can identify with. You've read hundreds, maybe even thousands of stories with a character involved in human struggle against forces of antagonism, and you've read them probably like this, and you've not been able to put those books down. That's because you imagine yourself as undergoing those same struggles with the protagonist and then coming out the other side in some kind of transcendent way, and that feels good to us as a reader. You probably know those times that's happened to you. I know the times that it's happened with me. And we never get tired of it. We never get tired of reading things, getting involved, getting tense. But we're getting tense, but we're safe. We're just turning pages. But it's tense and we're reading, and then we come out the other side, and then it's, glory and trumpets and fanfare and everything else, and we feel just great. We love it. So for that reason, I would try and get you to think about the character. That's what we call character arc. Character arc is the character getting involved in something, protagonist arc, however you want to call it, protagonist arc is the character getting involved in a conflict, committing to the conflict, struggling against the forces of antagonism, usually being driven down to their lowest point on possible, and then rising up, transcendent. Right? Ashvani, have you ever tired of that story?
Which story?
That story, the story of a character struggling and being pushed down to their lowest point and then transcending at the end. Have you ever tired of it?
I thought you were talking about a specific story.
No, all stories. I'm talking about every story you've read, Ashvani. We love it. So, but we do that by having a character introduced into a conflict. And we also care about their personal struggle. They're forced into a personal conflict, circumstances that I've never battled dragons, and I'm never going to battle dragons. So it's specific to this character, but I also understand the universal need to engage in this struggle for her survival, her enlightenment, her whatever it is that she's struggling to get. I understand it. I understand the problem. And then I see the struggle and I see that it goes down and I'm saying, oh no, she's never gonna, it's over. But it is not over, is it, Ashvani? No, it's not over until it's over. And when it's over, it lifts. It might just lift a little bit. It might not be great, but it lifts. It's better than, so I'm using my frame here on purpose. This, okay, gone. That's very bad. We don't like that at all. We don't like it. We don't like lift. Whatever you lift out of gone is good. I'm just saying. That's what I think. So that's the first thing. If you can, it's, you know what, your story here is probably all fine. If you got to writing this and imagining it through those symbolic means, I think that's fine. Whatever we need to use in order to get the words on the page all work. Now just kind of turn your mind a little bit away from the idea and a little bit more towards the character. For you to imagine being the character who's going through something and struggling. But so you're imagining that you're the character, but as the author, you're also constructing this journey. You're also constructing the journey that is this construction in the beginning, through the middle of struggle, that drives down to here, and then rises up like that. So you're also a structurer. You are two people. You imagine yourself as the character, and you don't imagine yourself, you act as this narrator who makes things happen that drive what's called the character arc. And then in this story, particularly, you do have something happen, but I would suggest what we have. We have the beginning, which is, it's sort of a hallucinatory start in this first paragraph, or maybe it's a dreamscape or something like that. I really don't know where I am. I don't know whether this is supposed to be like a real world or not a real world. I don't know if it's just in the mind or if it's tangible. So you want to think about that tangibility. We have this beginning where she's fleeing from the dragons chasing her, which is hard for me to understand and visualize, particularly since there's so many. She's taken a photograph. I don't have a sense of the reality of that photograph and whether it's in a real place. I mark in one spot, is this reality? But then after that, we actually drop into a backstory from 5,000 years ago, and the rest of the story is in backstory. So I think the backstory is fine, but what we want to do, I'm going to rephrase that. I like the story that you have as backstory. I've told this story many times. I had a teacher who is passed now, who I really cared about, John LaRue. He was just a mean guy. And he was wonderful too. He was mean and wonderful. And he had a mind like a razor blade. I mean, he would just eviscerate, everything in his wake. He was just wonderful. And one day I said, John, and I grabbed him by the lapels and I pushed him against the wall. He was a little guy, so it wasn't that difficult for me. And I said, tell me 2 things I really can use. And he said, dialogue is something characters do to each other. That was one. And the other thing is, only use backstory when you absolutely have to. That was the other one. 2 things. So I like the story that you've made into a backstory. Maybe that should be the story, right? Or the story that you started with that then you abandoned for the entire rest of the story, maybe that should be the story if you want to tell it. Right? You wrote 2 paragraphs of this one story, and then you go to backstory for 4 pages. You got to commit to what story you want to tell. Tell the front story, tell this story, and then just keep going forward. Go, look, it's going to go like this. It's going to go. There's a video. There's any of you know Kurt Vonnegut, the American writer?
I know of him, but I haven't read him.
Okay.
Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah, Slaughterhouse-Five and a number of other books. When I was a kid, I read all of his books. Look up there's a YouTube video called The Shape of Stories. The Shape of Stories, Kurt Vonnegut.
Okay.
Look that up. Watch Kurt Vonnegut. He's charming. He's a wonderful person. It seems like I never met him. I don't get everything I want. And watch The Shape of Stories, because this thing that I'm doing is a shape. And you'll notice that all of it, he's going to do shapes. And he's going to show you shapes, and he's going to be more charming than me. And you're going to notice that they're all basically the same. Mm-hmm. So commit to the story that you want to commit to, and then commit to making the shape of a story. The shape of a story is also a rhythm. It's a number of different things. It's communicating with the reader in ways that are beyond just this linear time frame. It's creating a dramatic arc that takes a character from point A to point B through this middle. That's also the challenge of that 4-page story round, right? Is to basically create the shape of a story.
Okay.
I love your writing. I love the imagination of it, and I can feel for sure as I'm reading sentence by sentence that you're in this world. It reminds me of this book by a Scottish writer called Lanark. You might enjoy it. Do you know Lanark?
Alexander Gray?
Yeah, you know it?
I've read a bit of it. I've attended one of his readings actually.
Really?
In Edinburgh.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I had won a Charles Wallace scholarship to study creative writing and postmodernism at the University of Edinburgh. So at that time I attended his reading.
Oh, you lucky person. Okay, well, your writing reminds me a little bit of his writing, so I can see how that all happened. Yeah, Lanark is, I don't know, for me, is it the thing that gets me the most? I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But was it bizarrely imaginative and amazing world that I got drawn into, yeah, absolutely. And I will never forget that. So I do see that energy in your work.
Thank you.
I mean,
that's a really big compliment, because I mean, Alexander Gray is like God. So, so I hope I can.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad. So do try and get through Lanark and notice the things he does. He takes you through these hallucinatory experiences, of course, and these worlds that you can't even really understand how they exist in the physical plane. They sort of either coexist or exist in the center of the earth. It's hard for me to tell you. But then there's also little places where it comes up into reality and then goes back, right? The reader is just barely grounded in that work. For me, I'm probably not grounded quite enough, but I keep reading because of the sentences and because of the imaginative capacity of the writer. But I do feel a little bit insecure. We basically, I think this goes back even to Jay and the thesis statement and all of this stuff. For our reader, we don't want the reader to feel insecure. We want the reader to know where they are and to know what they're doing. If they're reading, I'm just going to say, if they don't know where they are, and if they don't know why they're there, as they're going through the pages and they're feeling even more and more insecure, guess what they're feeling insecure about? Everything that they're not doing. We are an insecure species. We survive because of our insecurity. We start thinking, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm understanding that I'm not anywhere else, right? I'm not taking care of my kids. I'm not going to my job. I'm not doing these other things. There are other things that will actually help me live a better life, and this thing isn't, okay? We don't want that. We want this thing to be our book is the thing that's going to help our reader live a better life. We never want them to feel that that's not going to be the case. And that's how we hold our reader. I wish I took my own advice, everyone. I wish I did. I don't. But I keep telling myself these things by telling you, so that I hope that it will sink into my life at some point. And onward we go. That's it. I'm done. I throw up my hands, drop the mic.
Thank you so much. I'll rewrite the story and work on it. Thank you.
I'm so happy you know Alistair Gray and you know that book. So I really look forward to you reading that. Have you read? Did you read 100 Years of Solitude?
Yes, I have. I've read. I'm a very big fan. I read it when I was quite young, and I also like Salman Rushdie a lot. So he's also because he's also a magic realistic writer. So I do like Salman Rushdie, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Yeah.
Great.
But the best thing about 100 Years of Solitude is towards the end, he says all the answers were ultimately found in a manuscript in Sanskrit. That's what he writes. And as an Indian, that was...
That's great. Lanark is a little bit like this, but I really, when I finished 100 Years of Solitude, I mean, it really, for me, what was amazing about it was when I put it down, and at that time I had this table that was red, and it was, you know what a lazy Susan is? It rotates. So it was like this 1950s Formica table that would spin, and it was red. And I put the 100 Years of Solitude in the middle, and then I just walked away from it backwards like that. And then I sat down and I looked at it for a pretty long time. I mean, for being just a nut in my own house and alone, I was just looking at it maybe a couple minutes, right? But that's a long time. I'm like, because I knew what was inside of those 2 pages, right? I mean, you know the world that's inside of those two covers. And it's just too incredible to imagine that that world could be in that space.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable. You know, but that's what we get to work with. Anyway, thank you for your work. Thank you for being here, everyone. Nice to see you. Ashvani, think about taking on the 4-page story.
Will do.
I would love to see that next week. Please don't overwork it. I mean, you know that this is a workshop. You know, what we do here is we're not here to publish your work. So, right, we're not here to say, go publish, congratulations, you're done. Since we can't even do that, apparently. If we could publish our own work, I guess we would. We would just be like, I think it's good enough, done. Put it on the web, send it out there. But we don't do that. We're here to do a workshop. So do not worry about, the more precious it is, right, the more you work on it, the more difficult the workshop will be. Right.
I'm a little pressed for time, but I'll use smaller pages.
Ashwani, are we going to have to discuss this, that you're pressed for time? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you. It's so great to see you all.
Thank you, Otis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.